Welcome to Emerson on Assignment, the European project. I'm Michelle Harash.
And I'm Mike Bodette. We at Emerson College in Boston want to share our most recent assignment with you, crossing the Atlantic and covering the new Europe.
We went to the European Community Summit in the Maastricht, the Netherlands. This trip to the global village holds clues to our future role in the world. But first, as we prepared to cover the summit's daily events, a major story shook the world.
Terry Anderson's release ended an emotional 7-year struggle. Emerson reporter April Lewis went on assignment to Wiesbaden to cover Anderson's homecoming and takes us along.
He's finally free. After almost 7 years, Terry Anderson is coming home. His sister, Peggy Say, her fight is over. To say to the crowd, except he was glad to be home. Later, he stood on the hospital balcony with former hostages Joseph Sicipio and Alan Steen. It was a very emotional scene, as Anderson described his sister as fantastic, and he said it was great to have a sister like her. I'm here at the Wiesbaden U.S. Military Hospital, where Anderson landed a little over 24 hours ago. In the latest hospital update, doctors report Anderson is doing fine, and he should be able to fly home soon. I'm April Lewis in Wiesbaden, Germany.
Anderson then spent hours on the telephone calling family and old friends back in the States. Later the next afternoon, he and his sister, Peggy Say, met the press. A free Terry Anderson held on to his sister for support and thanked everyone who worked toward his release. Emerson College student Carl Lichtenstein asked Anderson if the U.S. did enough to get him out.
Do you feel there were any measures the United States government could have taken to expedite your release?
I think the United States, in the end, after some time, took the right policy in not negotiating with my captors.
Another Emerson journalist asked Anderson what it's like to be free.
Is there anything that you found out about since you've been released that surprised you? I mean, you had to have forgotten some things, and suddenly the senses were had an orgy. Was there anything that you saw that surprised you?
Maybe you'd rather say where your hometown is. There were a lot of things I forgot. A lot of things I thought about and thought I remembered, but didn't really remember. Like how good it felt to get out this morning, out in the green grass.
After the press conference, Anderson made his way out into the audience to shake hands with fellow reporters.
50 years ago, when we went to war, Europe was a foreign land. When the Berlin Wall went up and NATO ruled Western Europe, the continent became a major fascination to us. Now it seems to be a quaint distraction as we face problems at home. Money is on the minds of these European leaders as they arrive for the EIIC summit in the Netherlands. They have come to discuss uniting 12 European countries. They hope to share the same currency and dissolve all national borders, but they face major problems. The dozen countries have been independent for so long, they fear giving up any power. Emerson reporter Tom Lowell went on assignment to find out what the financial bottom line really is.
They say money talks, but Europeans can't decide what language it should speak. One of the biggest problems facing the European community's common market is creating a single currency. That currency is called the ECU, for European Currency Unit. Economists say making the money isn't a problem.
So technically it just would mean a lot of new coins printed, pressed, all sorts of technicalities which could be arranged in half a year, something like that.
But getting countries to use the ECU is another story.
Then you might expect before the year 2000 unification at least of some of the northern European countries. The chances that Italy and Greece will be part of that are small, I think.
So could you say we're still a long way from seeing one money for all Europe?
Yeah, for whole Europe it will be a very long way, yes.
The different exchange rates in Europe are driven by regional economies, and the ECU's supporters say those rates could be stabilized by a single currency. But not everyone agrees it's that simple.
12 currencies into one isn't an easy equation for any economist. So regardless of decisions at the summit, the future of the ECU is by no means safely in the bank. Reporting from Maastricht, the Netherlands, I'm Tom Lowell.
All the EC countries except Great Britain say they want to be using the ECU 6 years from now.
While the new Europe tries to figure out its bottom line, the Soviet Union finds itself out of money. So Emerson reporter Diane Sylvester went on assignment to see if the EC plans to help the failing superpower.
We're seeing foreign policy in the making in the Netherlands. A dozen European leaders came here to discuss their own unification, but the crumbling of the USSR has shifted their focus. The Soviet Union was once a nuclear superpower, but now it is split into 3 separate republics. So while the EC leaders are trying to decide what to do about the Soviet breakup, they're also looking at what role the U.S. may or may not play in their decision-making.
The United States is not the 13th member of the community.
No, I know, but there's been no cooperation between them?
Oh, we are constantly in contact with them for a number of subjects, but at present we are talking in the community.
EC leaders are sending over an envoy to check out the situation. This should help them make their decision. And with this, the EC has taken one step forward in becoming a superpower in its own right. In Maastricht, the Netherlands, Diane Sylvester.
While Europe's leaders negotiated inside, Europe's citizens protested outside. When we return, we'll show you why European farmers are so angry.
And we'll tell you why the Kurds and the Yugoslavs think the EC has let them down.
Outraged farmers hurled rocks and mini firebombs at riot police during the second day of the summit. These 5,000 Belgian farmers brought an angry message to Maastricht. Large EC subsidies keep them in business. Recent negotiations, however, would put their future in jeopardy, and they're not very happy about that.
EIIC meeting about reform of CAP, and that's to show our disapproval face to our ministers.
The U.S. and other Western nations have asked the EC to open the European market by cutting farm subsidies. Emerson reporter Bill McCandless went on assignment to see how such cuts would affect a typical European farm.
Some messages are universal, but here in the Netherlands, government subsidies make farming a different kind of business. Heavy tariffs keep out less expensive non-European goods, and huge subsidy programs make the small European farmer competitive on the world market. This farm in the Netherlands is run by 2 brothers and their families.
For Iowans, this farm is nothing more than a garden.
100 acres with more than half devoted to dairy cows. The rest is grain. Owner William Hartman is paid about $150,000 a year in grain and milk subsidies. Recent GATT talks in Europe could drive subsidies down, and that would force Hartman and thousands of European farmers like him out of business.
Well, I think there must be a lot of farmers which have to move, so they can't hold their head above water, so as we say it, financially.
Subsidies help him buy this house and afford this equipment. Without the extra money, he probably never would have made it this far. Bill McCandless, Maastricht, the Netherlands.
While the farmers are asking to keep things as they are, other protesters are demanding change. On the first day of the summit, Emerson reporters Maria Soares and April Lewis brought us on assignment to hear the demonstrators' pleas.
Don't forget us. That's what these Kurds are telling the world. They have marched down the center of Maastricht, Netherlands, where the 12 European leaders are meeting.
The Kurdish people are demanding recognition of their rights. Since the Persian Gulf War, the Kurds have suffered greatly, and this afternoon they're presenting a petition at the European Committee Summit.
Earlier this year, over 100,000 Kurds fled the terror of Saddam Hussein during the war. Now they are living in Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. The Kurds are protesting human rights violations committed against them by these countries.
In Iraq, hundreds of thousands and millions of people are living, still are living in very miserable condition. They have no food. Iraqi government made a boycott against, economic boycott against the Kurdish areas, and the people have nothing.
The Kurdish people live dispersed over 4 countries, and in all 4 countries they are persecuted and suppressed, and therefore they are asking for an international conference of the United Nations.
The Kurds want the European communities and the United Nations to help them fight for a better way of life. In Maastricht, Netherlands, I'm April Lewis.
Yugoslavians are trying to steal the spotlight away from the European summit. Thousands of angry protesters have rallied in a stadium in Maastricht, Netherlands, just across town from where the summit is being held. The protesters belong to the Croatian province of Yugoslavia. These people are in agony. There's a civil war going on, but they believe no one seems to care. Even though Yugoslavia isn't an official part of the European community, the EC says it has tried to force ceasefires, but they've all failed. These protesters are tired of war. They're tired of suffering.
Personally, I have the family in Osijek, I have family in Vukovar. These people I have the family who is killed, so you can imagine it.
This rally is for Croatians to make their stand loudly and clearly.
We needed concrete act. Concrete act is our independence, stop of war in Croatia, and leave the possibility to the Croatian people, like other people in Europe, to live it freely and democratically way.
From the stadium, all marches will proceed to the Maastricht train station. There they will present the head of state with a petition with all their demands.
The demands are simple. Disarm the former federal army, recognize the ex-Yugoslavian provinces as independent countries, and respect human rights. The future of Yugoslavia could be one of the first challenges for the new European community.
Just down the road from the protests, security was very tight. Guards stood vigil where the EC leaders were meeting. Emerson reporter Mary Murray went on assignment to see if there were any loopholes in the security net.
Security is beefed up for Europe's summit meeting. Leaders of the EC European community are meeting in Maastricht to decide Europe's economic and political future. Surveillance cameras and barbed wire surround the Provincie building where the summit is being held. At the Hotel Juliana, security is intense for French President Mitterrand, who has taken over the entire hotel.
You see the films, the cameras everywhere. The commando center is inside. A special telephone communication center is built in one of the rooms. And of course he has direct lines to Élysée, French government, and all the important people.
The main road to the hotel is blocked off. 150 Dutch police are involved in Mitterrand's security, as well as his own bodyguards and personal staff. The hotel director compares Mitterrand's security importance to President Bush.
Mr. Mitterrand is, after the period of Mr. Bush, I think that he is the best secured leader in Europe. He has quite a lot of special wishes, because he's the only leader. He is Monsieur le Président.
As tight as Mitterrand's security is at the Juliana, it's really just the European standard.
Police are patrolling and checking. They are also securing the buildings close to where the summit is being held. One policeman came 200 miles to cover the summit security.
Yeah, there's a special team for the bomb search over here. And the whole building is searched at bombs, so it's safety.
Security will continue until the summit ends. In Maastricht, the Netherlands, I'm Mary Murray.
While guards stood vigil outside the meeting place, international journalists did the same in a building across the street. Emerson reporter Kelly Sheriff was on assignment with the rest of the press corps. Her story, reporting about them.
The world has come to Europe. The European Economic Summit has attracted over 2,500 international journalists. It's all taking place here in the Netherlands. From Tokyo to Tel Aviv, reporters are looking for the European scoop. Technology makes it easy.
This room behind us has the facility for 700 journalists. Each position is equipped with its own telephone. We have many fax machines, photocopiers, and computer links all around the room that they can use. And we also have our television and radio studio downstairs, which has 68 portable cabins, each fully equipped. We have 4 feed points, and there are many backgrounds for live stand-ups, so there's everything that the journalists could need here in this building.
But technology can't answer everything. There are some barriers. There are at least 12 different languages being spoken here in this room. That's the same story, 12 different ways. EC press conferences like this are held every half hour. Translation is available, but some journalists still find it hard.
It is funny. I mean, beside me it's French, but fortunately I could speak French. I mean, I can speak French, but sometimes you get nervous because you are talking in Indonesian and then you can listen to them. And sometimes it's funny, on the right side is Spanish, so which one I have? So I changed my neighbor.
The miles of cables in worldwide communication here just prove how the European community's business has become that of everyone else. In Maastricht, the Netherlands, I'm Kelly Sheriff.
When we return, we'll show you why the small town of Maastricht is a big player in the European political world.
Also coming up, a young team of journalists compete with international media giants. These stories and more right after this.
While Maastricht hosted the summit, our team of reporters set out on assignment to see if there's more to the town than international politics. We start with reporter Maria Soares, who tried to figure out what the term Euro really means.
Euro. It could be a cafe, or a shoe, or a fancy building. But what is it really?
You are Europeans and not Netherlands and Italy. It's all one family. Everything is free.
I think it has something to do with 1992, yeah. No idea.
It's supposed to mean Europe coming together as one. No boundaries, the same money. The idea is one big happy Europe. The European countries have been talking about this idea for a long time. The European Community, or EC, will be meeting next week to try to put the idea in writing. Euro is the idea. It's the goal of this meeting here in Maastricht, Holland. Store windows are displaying the EC flags, but most people see the signs and ignore them. Is a unified Europe possible? Is Euro realistic? If the U.S. can join 50 states, why can't Europe join 12? Reporting here from Maastricht, Holland, this is Maria Soares.
Even though Euro may be tough to define, you can't help but feel it in the Netherlands. By just taking a walk around Maastricht, you can get a sense of what we mean. The streets of Netherlands hold a European touch. There is sculpture, architecture, and fashion. Life in Maastricht is slower. In fact, almost everyone walks or rides bikes wherever they go. People even shop at a more relaxed pace. We're not sure if this means the Dutch spend more money than Americans, but it may mean they have more fun. And once you're done roaming the city, you might want to see what there is to buy. Europeans come from all over the continent to shop at Maastricht's marketplace. Emerson reporter Mary Murray was given the assignment to check out the square and see how it all works.
It's noisy, crowded, and a great place to barter. Maastricht's open marketplace is a shopper's haven and has the best bargains in the Netherlands. Every Friday, locals go into town by bus and eagerly pick their fresh fruits, vegetables, and fish. Cheese is the local favorite and the most popular food stall. And it's a smorgasbord of language here. It's worth the trip coming to this busy and exciting marketplace, so if you plan on coming down, be sure to bring your wallet. You'll have a pretty hard time deciding what to buy because there are so many choices. With or without the flood of tourists and journalists to Maastricht for the EC summit, the marketplace will flourish.
Maybe there are some more tourists or so, or journalists, but for us it's not very important. For the market it's not important at all.
From carp to carpets, it's all reasonably priced. You can't help but go home with something, even if you were just planning to browse. I'm Mary Murray, Maastricht, the Netherlands.
But if you're looking to shop and be socially responsible, Emerson reporter Diane Sylvester visits one store where the meaning of Christmas is taken to heart.
The poor may never wear these, but they can benefit from them. The U.S. may have occasional relief for third world countries, but here, the giving lasts year-round. This shop is the Wiederwinkel, which means world shop in English. Everything here is made by the poor in the third world, and all the profits go right back to them. They may cost shoppers a little bit more, but they think it's worth it.
We try to make the people conscious of the fact that they are profiting from the low prices in the world, from the third world people. So they will always stay poor if they don't get a good price for their products, and they are working as well very hard to get a good living, and we are only profiting of them if we don't give them a good, well price.
For the past 20 years, volunteers have been running the shop. In Maastricht, the Netherlands, I'm Diane Sylvester.
The Dutch are also one step ahead of us when it comes to recycling. Everyone in the Netherlands seems to be on a mission to recycle. They've even made it the law. In Maastricht, they don't just recycle newspapers and tin cans, but they include everything from potato peels to television sets. People seem to take time out of their workday to carry the stuff down to the sanitation department. That's because the Dutch believe recycling is the only way to go, environmentally and economically.
The Dutch may have a firm grasp on recycling, but car thieves seem to be slipping through their fingers. Emerson reporter April Lewis went on assignment to the Dutch borders to check out how the thieves do it.
Crossing these borders is easy. Just ask car thieves. Here in Maastricht, Netherlands, almost 400 cars have been stolen since July. Police believe organized gangs are to blame. Gangs pick specific cars to rip off and sell the parts in other countries. Theft not only affects residents, but visitors as well. Car rental prices are going through the roof. The owner of La Blanche Car Rental thinks the police could work harder.
There is no more control. Now there's a little bit control by the borders. But I hope in the future the police works more together. And now you have the Dutch police and the Belgian and the German, and is there something or a car stolen and we signed it by the police, then so the police of Holland knows that, and 2 days later that's the police of Belgium or Germany, and then most time it's too late.
As a united Europe approaches, police fear stolen cars will be harder to find, since there won't be any custom officials at the borders. Maastricht police say they're trying to expand their communication center to include all of the European communities. This is April Lewis reporting in Maastricht, Netherlands.
When we come back, we'll show you how the Emerson project went from an idea to a reality.
And later we'll give you a taste of the Dutch holidays.
We often hear journalists talk about their stories, but we rarely hear what happens to them while on assignment. Emerson reporter Maria Soares gets some insight from those involved in Emerson's European project.
What a fabulous idea! Why don't we have some students cover the summit?
So off they were, 2 professors and 8 college students on a plane to Europe. They headed to the Netherlands to join the other students at the Emerson College campus in Maastricht. The students set up base at Emerson's European Institute of International Communication, or EIIC. From this newsroom, the students prepared to cover the summit and for the unexpected release of Terry Anderson. My colleagues tell it best.
When Terry Anderson was free, we decided to write a press release. I wrote a press release and we sent it out, faxed it to all the stations around the area. Meanwhile, all the stations were calling in knowing that we had the first Free Terry Anderson committee.
First we heard it over the radio that there were unconfirmed reports he was free, and AP Wire was coming in saying he was free, and then he wasn't free, and he was on a bus stuck in the middle of the snow on his way to Damascus, and we didn't know what was going on. It was very hectic, and we kept faxing back and forth messages to Maastricht because they didn't have any way to find out what was going on.
I can't even tell you what it was like to see Terry Anderson's chopper come in. It was dark, and there were lights that were just lighting up the field where the chopper was going to land, and when it came down, you could just heard the chopper coming in from the sky, and the red light, and then as it was on the ground, I looked through the glass door, and there was Anderson sitting there looking through the glass door, and it was just as if he were still in captivity.
It was like incomprehensible that these people you're in school with are over there and actually like at this press conference covering it all, and it was just kind of, is this really happening? Are they really like hiding somewhere down the street and like phoning us and telling us they're at all these places and they're not really there?
We just did a lot of research and legwork and studying and meetings and sessions to gear up for the project itself.
So covering the summit itself
and covering the ideas of what was going on compared to the logistics and the physical covering of the story itself was nothing. I mean, it's an easy concept to grasp, 12 countries coming together as one. But learning how to use the phone and the country codes, and there's no phone books, and it's all in a different language. Those were the hardest things to overcome. Those were much harder than learning about the EC.
Being at the NEC with over 1,500 other journalists, professional journalists, is probably one of the most exciting times in my life. I got to see what I want to do someday. It's overwhelming, but I learned so much.
So I think the project was incredible. I still can't believe that we did it. I can't believe that the students pulled it off. I can't believe one of the students pulled off a live satellite shot. I would have been scared out of my mind.
Would I do it again? In a heartbeat.
Maria Suarez reporting.
When we return, we'll talk with some of the reporters who went on assignment and see what they think about a changing Europe.
Also coming up, what happens when the story you're covering changes at the last minute? We'll show you, and we'll be back in a moment.